I never thought that in the final stretch of my life, I'd have to pretend I didn't have money, just to hold on to a little dignity. My name is Isabel. I've lived my whole life in a quiet town, where Sunday mornings smell like fresh coffee and church bells echo through cobblestone streets. My husband passed away when our kids were still small. I raised them on my own. Life was tough back then, every penny mattered. Even now, in old age, I handle all my expenses myself. It's just the way I've always done things, even though my kids are grown and have families of their own. One day, I was standing in line at the bank, waiting to withdraw a bit of cash for groceries, when I ran into Anna, a friend from back when we both sold homemade snacks to get by. She looked me up and down and sighed. "Isabel, you're still doing all this on your own? You should let your kids take care of you." I smiled, a smile that hid more than it showed. Her words stung. I wanted to answer, but nothing came out. People don't always understand it's not about being stingy. Sometimes, keeping a little money for yourself is the only way to keep some control over your life. But later, I wondered, am I just being stubborn? Shouldn't love mean letting go, trusting my children to take care of me? My son Louise lost his job as a carpenter last year when a major construction project in town got cancelled. He tried starting a small business, but it hasn't taken off. Now, his son Tomas is getting married, and he needs money for a down payment on a house, for the wedding. None of that comes cheap around here. Louise came to Minot with a hug or a smile, but with a sharp question. "Mom, how much do you have in the bank?" In that moment, I didn't see a tired son. I saw a calculating stare. I nearly told him everything. A part of me wanted to give it all to him, like I always have. But another voice whispered inside, "If I give it all away, what do I have left? My dignity? My home? My quiet corner of the world?" I turned to the small altar in the living room, where a candle always flickers its light, as fragile as I felt inside. I whispered, "He who guards his mouth protects his soul." We older folks don't need to say everything, but my heart still wonders, should I keep this little bit for myself or give it away to buy a temporary peace? What do I need to do to not lose myself? If you've ever stood between love and self-respect, share your story in the comments. If this touched your heart, leave a like as a gentle shoulder squeeze that says, "I see you." Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss more stories like this. And tell me, where are you listening from? I often wonder if my kids remember those hard years when I quietly worked to smooth their road, even as mine stayed rocky. When Luis was in college, he once dreamed of an old motorcycle, not a fancy one, just something to help him get to work on time. I still remember how shyly he asked me for help. I didn't have much, just a bit, saved from skipping meat at the market, from turning the lights off early to trim the power bill. But I went to the bank, took out some of that hard-earned savings, and handed it to him with a smile. "So you won't be late, my boy." I never told anyone. It was different with Maria. When she was in her final year of nursing school, I found a letter in her backpack from the university about late tuition. She never asked me for help. She was always proud like that. But I saw the worry in her eyes, the fear that she might not graduate. Quietly, I went to her school's office and paid the balance. I slipped a note into her textbook that simply said, "Keep going, my girl." She didn't say anything, but that night, her hug lasted a little longer than usual. For years, I lived on a modest retirement check, just enough to get by. No extras, no vacations, no new clothes. But it didn't matter. My happiness came from watching my children move forward, not from looking in the mirror. What I didn't expect was that over time, those sacrifices would become invisible. The things I gave wholeheartedly, with love, were eventually seen as just my duty, as if I owed them, as if every dollar I gave didn't carry a piece of my heart. I remember one day, I casually mentioned a small emergency fund I had just enough to survive for a few months. Louise laughed and said, half joking, "That's it, Mom. I thought you'd have more, with the way you save." It hit me harder than a slap, as if the way I lived was laughable, as if I didn't deserve to keep anything for myself. I didn't respond. I didn't want to hurt him. But that night, lying in the dark, my throat tightened. For the first time, I asked myself, was my silence wisdom, or was it cowardice? People say giving is love, but giving in the wrong places leaves wounds too. I became a master of silence. I hid small sadnesses in diary pages, tucked away in kitchen drawers. But those feelings piled up, like dust on old furniture, until one day they covered everything. I never asked to be praised. But just once, I wanted to hear, "Thanks, Mom. I know what you've done for me." Have you ever given so much that you started to feel invisible? The hardest part isn't the silence, it's realizing that the more I gave, the less I was seen as a mother. I became someone who was just there, always available, until I started moving from one child's house to the other, and finally I understood. My body had slowed down. Maria was about to have her first baby. She asked if I could stay for a while and help. I said yes, not because I had to, but because her voice was soft, full of warmth, not expectation. Her home was simple but cozy. She prepared a small room for me, with a quilt she'd sewn herself on her days off. Her husband, a quiet and kind man, greeted me every morning with a smile and a hot cup of coffee. Maria would leave me notes in the kitchen. "Don't wake up early. Mommy made breakfast today." When I got sick, they took me to the doctor. They bought me my favorite pastries. They made me feel like part of the family, not a burden. Taking care of my granddaughter was joy, not obligation. For the first time in years, I felt loved. I felt seen. But time passed. My granddaughter started school, and one day Maria gently said, "Mom, I think you'd feel more comfortable back in your own home with your garden, your chair, your books." She was right. I came home with a heart full, but that joy didn't last. Not long after, Louise called. "Mom, Sophia's pregnant. Could you come help us, like you did for Maria?" I said yes. A mother's love shouldn't play favorites. I packed my things and moved in with Luis and his family for a while. From the first day, things felt different. Sophia barely greeted me. My room was a cramped corner in the laundry room, with an old mattress and no window. No sweet notes, no morning coffee, just a to-do list taped to the fridge. Laundry, cooking, clean the bathroom. I had become the maid. I cooked, cleaned, changed diapers. But if I left a spoon in the wrong drawer, I'd hear sighs of frustration. When I got sick, there was no doctor, no cake, no comfort. Just a bag of painkillers and silence. What hurt most was when they started asking for my pension money to help with household expenses. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a disguised demand. When I tried to save a little to buy a sweater, Louise said, "Mom, everyone contributes. You live here too, remember?" Live here? My name wasn't even on the doorbell. Then came Christmas. I used to light up the house with candles and laughter. I cooked from the heart. But that year, I stood alone in the kitchen frying cod, while the rest of the family laughed in the living room. No one asked me to join. No one raised a glass. I placed the food at the edge of the table and listened to the distant laughter. That night, I felt the cold not just of winter, but of not belonging. In my tiny corner, I whispered a prayer. "Lord, if you brought me here, please show me the lesson I need to learn." The next morning, I looked in the mirror. I didn't see a mother. I didn't see a grandmother. I saw a tired woman with dimming eyes. I thought of Maria's handwritten notes, her embroidered blanket, the warm cup of coffee, and I asked myself, why is it that sometimes the more we give, the more we disappear? That question followed me for weeks. Until one morning, folding laundry, I overheard Sophia on the phone. She won't be here much longer. She's old, and honestly, she's not much help. That day, I started packing. I didn't say a word. I didn't argue. I just packed my suitcase with the same quiet strength I had when I raised my children alone. Before I left, I placed a small note on the kitchen counter. Thank you for having me. It's time for me to go home. Luis walked me to the door. He didn't meet my eyes. He only said, "Take care of yourself, Mom." No hug. I returned home to my armchair, my garden, and the kind of silence that doesn't hurt. Coming back was like finally breathing after being underwater too long. The old walls, chipped and worn, wrapped around me like an embrace. My worn-out chair. My quiet kitchen. The peace that didn't judge just held me. When Sophia found out I had left, she let out a sigh, almost relieved. "Well, now she'll have time to rest," she said, her voice barely convincing. Luis helped carry my suitcase. He didn't ask if I needed anything. Deep down, I knew they wanted me gone. Weeks passed. I didn't hear from them. Maria would drop by with home-cooked meals. We'd sit and drink coffee. She didn't say much, but she listened. And that was enough. I found peace in small things again. Tidying up the garden, repainting the fence, reorganizing my old books. But peace is often just the quiet between two storms. One Sunday afternoon, as I swept the porch, I heard a knock. Luis and Sophia stood at the door. Casual clothes, serious faces. Sophia held a folder. Luis pressed his lips tight. "Mom, can we come in?" he asked. I made coffee. We sat around the table. They didn't drink. They kept glancing at each other, waiting for the other to speak. Finally, Sophia broke the silence. We came to talk about something important. Toma, she's getting married, and his fiancée's family expects them to have their own house. Luis added, "We've looked at all the numbers. We just can't afford it. But you have this house. If you sold it, you could move in with us. There's room." Sophia quickly added, "Yeah, we'll take care of you. Our place has an elevator, 3 bedrooms, a shared garden." I looked at them and said nothing. The coffee in my hands had gone cold. I recognized that look. The look of urgency, of calculation. "This house, your father and I built it, brick by brick. You were both born here. He passed away here." Luis looked away. Sophia let out a sigh. "Mom, we just want what's best for you. It's dangerous living alone. You're not young anymore." I stood up and started washing the cups. I didn't answer. A few days later, I turned 80. Maria threw a small party, just neighbors and old friends. She made tamales, hung colorful lights, and gave me a new dress. It was simple, but full of love. Luis and Sophia showed up late. Sophia didn't greet anyone. Luis stood in the corner, glued to his phone. They didn't touch the tamales, didn't even come near the birthday cake. They left before the party ended. No one seemed to notice. The next day, they came back with the same folder. Sophia spoke, her tone impatient. "We're not pressuring you, but if you don't sell now, it'll be harder later. This house is worth a lot, you know that." I looked at the papers. Numbers, graphs, interest rates, all logic. But love doesn't come in percentages. I sat up straight and said, "I'm not selling this house. It's the last thing I have of your father. This is my home, and it's where I want to stay. It's where I want to go when the time comes." Luis said nothing. Sophia frowned. "So you're just going to leave it all to Maria?" I stayed silent, but something cracked inside me. Luis murmured, "We just want what's best for you." But that wasn't true. And they knew it. After they left, I sat by the altar where the candle always flickered. I took a deep breath. The flame trembled. I wondered if that would be the last time they came with sweet words and empty hands. I knew it wouldn't be. They'd be back. With new reasons, new tactics. And I had to be ready. If you've ever had to protect something precious, how did you do it? That night, I couldn't sleep. The stillness of the house grew heavier with every hour. I sat before a photo of my husband taken the day we finished building this house. His shy smile, messy hair. Me in a simple dress, holding his hand like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. I lit a candle and whispered, "What would you do, my love? Would you let them take this away?" There was no answer. Just the creaking of old wood in the cold. I opened the Bible. My eyes landed on the verse I had marked long ago. "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, and it will be given." James 1-5. I closed the book. It was time to act. With clarity. Without resentment. With a calm mind and a steady heart. The next morning, I called Maria and asked her to come without saying why. When she arrived, I invited her to sit and told her everything. No drama, no tears. "Luis wants me to sell the house, but I won't. Still, I don't want this to turn into a war between you two." Maria listened quietly. Then she said, "Whatever you decide, I support you." I brought out a small notebook where I had written every expense, every income, my pension, my savings, the cash I kept hidden in a jar in the cupboard. It totaled about $15,000. Not much to some, but to me, it was a lifetime. I decided to give $5,000 to each of them, Luis and Maria. Not an inheritance. A gesture. A message. This is for you both. Not because I have to, but because I want you to know I'm still in charge of my life. No one else decides for me. Maria refused. I told her if she didn't take it, the balance would be broken. Luis needed to receive the psalm to avoid resentment. The next day, I invited them both for dinner. I cooked their childhood favorites beef noodle soup, crispy pancakes. I set the table like I used to. When they sat down, I handed them each an envelope. This is a small gift. Not out of pressure. Not out of duty. It's my choice. Luis opened his envelope. His eyes lit up. Maria glanced at hers, folded it carefully, and said nothing. Luis said, "Really, Mom, this will help us a lot." "I'm glad. But remember, this is a gift, not a promise for more." The meal ended in a quiet peace. Afterward, while Maria helped me clear the table, I asked her to stay a little longer. In my room, I handed her a folder. "These are bank documents. I opened a new account. What's left is in your name. But not a single dollar gets touched, unless I say so." Maria looked stunned. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you've never asked me for anything. And because I trust that if one day I'm no longer clear-minded, you'll honor what I wanted." She didn't answer right away. She just hugged me tight. And in that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. We signed a simple agreement. Nothing fancy or legalistic, but clear. I remained the owner. She was just the keeper. We tucked the document away in a drawer next to my will. I didn't tell anyone. Not the neighbors. Not Luis. In the days that followed, a strange peace settled over me. Not because everything was resolved, but because, for the first time, I felt in control. Still, I wasn't naive. I knew Luis would return. With new reasons, new promises, new requests. Have you ever had to make a hard decision to protect something important? I'd love to hear your story. Just a few days after the dinner, I heard a knock at the door. The wind howled that night, dry leaves swirling across the porch like they were trying to break in. Luis stood there, holding a bag of apples and bananas, a forced smile on his face. "Hi, Mom. I was in the area and thought I'd stop by." We sat in the kitchen. I poured cinnamon tea. He stirred his cup, but didn't drink. The silence between us was heavy. Finally, he spoke. "About the money you gave us. We put it toward the deposit. But we still need furniture, closets, just the basics." I looked at him, heart heavy. Part of me wanted to give him everything, like I always had. But another voice rose inside me. If I give it all away, what will I have left? Will I one day have to beg for help? I remembered his first steps, the painting he made me, the night I wiped sweat from his forehead during a fever. When did he stop seeing me and only start seeing numbers? I took a deep breath and spoke gently, but firmly. "My son, I've spent my whole life giving you and Maria everything I had. Not just money, but love. Sleepless nights, silent prayers. When you ask me how much I have, you don't see your mother. You see figures on a page. I'm not mad at you, but I want you to understand. If I give everything, I stop being your mom. I become a shadow. I don't owe anyone an account of what I have. Let me keep what's mine. Forget it. Build your future with your own hands. I'm old now. I've kept a little just to take care of myself so I don't have to ask you for help. Live in a way your son, Tomas, can be proud of." Luis lowered his head, fiddling with his spoon, like it could keep him grounded. I continued, "You're not cut out for business, and that's okay. Just live simply like everyone else. Stop chasing dreams of getting rich. It'll only bring misery. And if you want wealth, start by treating your parents with kindness. Work hard. That's where it begins." His eyes welled up, but he didn't speak. He stood slowly, gave a small nod, and left. I leaned against the door after I closed it. Tears slid down, not from anger, but from doubt. Had my words reached him? I sat at my little altar. The candle flickered like my heart. El que guarda su boca guarda su alma. He who guards his mouth guards his soul. But inside, I still wondered. Had I done the right thing? The next morning, a message appeared on my phone. "Mom, I'm sorry about last night. I need time to think. I hope you understand." I didn't reply. I just looked out the window. Clouds gathered above. After that message, Luis didn't come by. The house returned to its rhythm. Birdsong, the smell of cinnamon coffee, the soft patter of bare feet on cold floors. I made tamales just for me, embroidered the tablecloth again, planted basil in the patio pots. Neighbors stopped by, bringing pastries and stories. Maria came weekly, with chiles rellenos or tres leches cake. Her gentle presence was healing. One day, while watering flowers on the balcony, I thought, I'm still here, still living, still deciding. I wrapped a blue shawl around my shoulders and walked to the little church. In silence, I knelt at the altar. Thank you, Lord, for giving me clarity. It's not selfishness, it's dignity. A tear slipped down, but it wasn't sadness. It was relief. As I stepped outside, the sun was setting. Golden light bathed the walls. The air smelled like fresh bread. I walked home, slowly, with no rush. After months of silence, Luis came back. He didn't bring fruit. No paperwork. Just honest eyes and hands clasped tightly in his lap. I poured him black coffee, the kind he's loved since he was a boy. He sat across from me, took a deep breath, and said, "I know I let you down, Mom. You were right. I saw money, not you. And I'm sorry. I really am. I don't want Tomas growing up thinking that family is about taking things from each other." I smiled, rested my hand gently on his. "Son, all I've ever wanted was for you to be okay." Okay means standing tall, building something together. And I'm proud of you for understanding that. Luis told me he'd found work again at a small woodworking shop in town. The pay wasn't great, he said, but having a job was enough. Today, he came by to bring me some money. His hands, rough with calluses and dusted with sawdust, trembled slightly as he held out the cash. I didn't take it. I knew he still needed it more than I did. One Sunday afternoon, Luis came again, this time with Tomas. They brought a cloth-wrapped box. Inside, homemade empanadas. "Tomas and I made them together," Luis said, a little sheepish. "He did the baking. They're a bit overdone, but we really tried." I laughed, really laughed. I hugged my grandson, then laid the empanadas on the table. They weren't perfect, just like us, but they were full of love, of effort, and the return of something precious. Family. Now, as I write these words, I don't worry about age, or health, or loneliness, because I know Luis finally sees, not through what I gave, but through what I held onto, myself, and in a quiet corner of my heart, I keep a place where love asks for nothing, where my soul rests, knowing I did what was right.